the main education resolution, which was for the status quo. And this amendment that we helped pass was that the party would set up an education task force to study issues of funding, including public school, single public school board. This amendment, okay, so the Socialist Caucus participated in this task force, and we presented a document to the task force at one provincial council, which is available for sale on the desk here. It's a very thoughtful paper, we think. And then we organized a very successful public forum and invited several illustrious speakers. We had Peter Russell, Professor Emeritus of U of T, one of Canada's foremost constitutional experts, come. He was invited to speak, and he did speak. We had Abby Deschman, a lawyer formerly for the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. She was invited to speak, accepted, and did speak. We had two other Ontario public school trustees, Jan Johnson and another fellow. They were invited to speak, and they did speak. We invited our own Michael Prue, the NDP member of Provincial Parliament for Beaches, East York, was invited and he accepted to speak, but he did not speak. He was told by the Legislative Caucus, and probably more specifically the leader, that MPPs were not to participate in this debate, to not weigh in on the issue. So I want you to get a clear picture of this situation. The Convention has resolved to have a democratic discussion on educational issues. But MPPs are gagged if they don't support the status quo. They're not allowed to express their opinions. They're given less democratic rights than even a regular card-carrying NDP member. Our party's called the New Democratic Party. But what does the word democratic mean, anyways? It certainly doesn't mean that we simply participate in parliamentary elections and universal suffrage. The Conservatives and Liberals do that too. That's not what it means. I think part of the intent of the democratic label means that we strive for a certain amount of economic democracy in society as a whole. But we try to break down some of the inequalities. That's certainly part of it. But certainly part of the intent of the democratic label of our party is that we believe in the democratic structure of our party. That we don't believe that our party should be ruled by certain elites and oligarchies. That we should have an open party. A party where all members are equal, where our conventions and our resolutions forge our policies. Finally, our riding associations should be the grassroots of the party, and their decisions there should not be trifled with. So, if that's part of what democratic means in NDP, and we have to fight to get it back in there. So, with that being said, I hope we can move forward on some of these issues. We're going to have a short, well, not a break now. What we're going to do is I'm going to outline the format for the rest of the meeting. But before we do that, or as we do that, any organization or endeavor does require a little bit of cash. We have to print some leaflets. We may have to rent some rooms in the future, things like that. So it was, of course, free admission. If anybody, we're going to pass a bucket around. Julius has it, and if anybody would like to just throw in a small amount of money or whatever to help fund the organization, that would be not turned away.
Paper rather than coin.
Yes. What was that? A silent offering.
The Russell pieces of colored paper.
I'd like to also, once you have that going,
My bills? Okay.
I'd like to also announce a couple of meetings that are coming up. We do have the Provincial Council meeting on Saturday, November the 19th, where, again, the Campaign to Restore Democracy in the NDP, we're going to have a public forum. There'll be hundreds of NDPers in town for this Provincial Council. And we're going to continue, we'll not only have a meeting, during Saturday of the Provincial Council, but we'll be pushing resolutions forth during that council. We also have another announcement that Julius was going to do, but perhaps John Wilson could do it because he's in charge of, he's busy collecting money. John, do you want to just announce what there's a meeting that's coming up a week after the Provincial Council.
Yeah, there's an NDP Socialist Caucus annual federal conference. It's going to be held on Saturday, November 26th.
It's this leaflet.
Yeah.
We all have it.
Okay. And it's going to be held in Lacey. And the address and the room number is there. And we're hoping that everybody here will see fit to attend it and help us carry on. So
Okay.
That's the leaflet, so all the details are in there, okay?
Thank you, John. Okay. I'm going to outline now a proposal of how the rest of the meeting is, I'm hoping, can proceed. It will be 4 different sections. It's going to involve everybody's participation. The first section was going to be a very short section because what I would like to do is ask, is anybody in the audience who has questions of our speakers about these specific events, just about these events, to ask the speakers, and then the speakers will have time to answer them. Any questions of fact. We want you to propose those questions if you have any to.
Good. I got one.
No, wait a sec, then they'll come back. The second part of the meeting is, after that, is that I would like to have a participation where everybody makes statements of corroboration or statements of interest, statements of fact that have happened to them or their riding association. Anything that's happened in their involvement in the NDP where they think democracy is at risk in the NDP. So bring up what's happened to you. Then the third part is we'll have David Wainberg will present a statement of resolve, the objectives of CREDO as we've put forward so far. We have had some consensus, and it's on a piece of paper. He'll present that, and we'll deal with some resolutions. We'll vote on how we move ahead. And then the fourth part of this is, as we move ahead, we have to actually plan it. So we might have to set up a resolutions committee, a planning committee, and also a steering committee, things like that. How are we going to move ahead, and what actions are we going to take? So, without, I'm going to open it up to the floor now with the part number 1. Is anybody questions that they have for our panelists, our speakers? Okay, hands?
Well, my question is addressed to Diana. I still can't believe that having run a successful federal campaign, that they didn't automatically consider you to run a half a year later almost for the provincial one. Were there any incidents in your federal campaign, or were there any controversies raised in the public, or was there any hook that they had to hang on other than this fact that you seem to be having issues with your professional association, which has no bearing on the public interest anyway?
Thank you so much for that very, very pointed question. No, not at all. In fact, throughout the campaign with the media, I was really well received. I did a debate with Kirsty Duncan, the incumbent, federal incumbent, with Rogers Cable 10, and the Conservatives didn't show up, but that seems to be typical. They don't show up for any debates or debates. Okay, so it was Kirsty Duncan, the incumbent, myself, and the Libertarian, young man going for the first time, quite full of himself. In fact, he messed up a lot in the televised debate. I was told at the end of that debate, just to give you an idea of how there was nothing, I rose to the challenge. At the end, the producer took me aside. He couldn't wait to speak to me. He came right up to me when the cameras went off. He pulled me aside and whispered in my ear, he said, "You did fantastic, Diana." He said, "You put her to shame." That's what the producer told me. And he said, I'm going to call Jack Layton and Olivia Child themselves. I'm going to let them know how well you did. So that sort of sums it up in a nutshell. I went to some all candidates meetings in Etobicoke North. There's a library where they typically have the women's group in Etobicoke North. They're called the Rexdale Women's Group. They typically host it, and some other groups, like the youth groups fighting against violence, get involved. And even at that, I had a lot of positive off of the official panel. Speaking, I'm going to vote for you. Oh, you spoke to me. Oh, you came from poverty. Or you used to live in Jamestown. Oh my God, my cousin lives there. Positive. Going out, knocking on doors, going to apartment buildings, because I know what it is to be poor, I know what it is to have challenges, having no fear. Going to some apartment buildings in Etobicoke North, where literally there is feces in the hallway, but knocking on those doors and meeting people. So no.
Thank you.
By the way, I used to work in that riding when Phillips was in there, and on the public school funding, if I may just interrupt, we managed to overturn Phillips in his own riding when we did have an active riding association in that riding. And that goes back to 25 years from now.
Lori.
Just a question on that nomination meeting notice. Who, did your riding association send this out?
Not at all.
Or did the, okay.
We were all new, brand new elected, didn't know a clue. I myself, because I'm an educator and I have a master's degree, I went through all the Constitution, I went through the laws, I went through elections law. I informed my riding association what we need to do, what we need to consider, who we need to call. As we were learning, we were all brand new elected, didn't know a clue, didn't have a clue.
So provincial office sent this
Yes.
out on your behalf?
Yes, on our behalf, in quotation marks. We were just received it like a regular member, had no control. We asked questions. How do we run this
So did you
association
have an
meeting?
election planning committee?
No. They just told us.
Candidate search committee of your riding association?
No, we were all brand new.
Didn't have any
support, any information passed on. We requested it all the time. Nothing.
Okay.
And what about the federal one?
Hold on.
Sorry.
One
Just
question at a time.
because Barry was given, what rightly or wrongly, seems to me a more clear explanation as to why he was turned down or why his candidacy, because you said bad things about Andrew, that basically, right? And they found out about it, and you tried to hide it, even though it was on the internet, whatever, right? They seem to be, Darlene was clear, at the very least, in terms of giving you an explanation as to why she rescinded your candidacy, right? Like, I mean,
A very
rightly
poor
or
and
wrong,
contradictory
doesn't matter, but
explanation,
she gave
but-
you reasons. Seems like she didn't give Diana.
Not one reason. I requested
reasons?
specifically.
Well, just a dispute with her union.
That's what she said?
She didn't even say that. She would not actually emit those words. It was her underling temporary staff who said, oh, your legal issue with your teachers union, the party feels it may be a distraction from the leader's message. She wouldn't even say you're pursuing legal action against your elementary teachers of Toronto.
But you were called by the staff person
Yes.
before you went to see Darlene.
Yes, because
Right?
I was
You
requesting.
went to see Darlene after that.
Yes.
Okay.
Steve.
Um,
Steve.
Yeah, along those kind of the same lines. So Diane did not get a formal written reason for anything. That would seem like be a normal prerequisite if this is going to come up in a formal way at provincial council. Like, it's ridiculous that they've dropped the ball in this way. I don't know. I just bizarre that they would give a formal reason.
Well, put it this, sorry, can I just, I totally agree, but even to really hammer that point home, think of it this way. A riding happens to be members who have a vested interest in selecting their person because they're a team with that, or their membership with the ideology of that party, whatever, aside. But a riding is going to have one person represent supposedly their interests. One person representing some 100,000 plus or minus members. That is a huge responsibility, and everybody would expect, regardless of whether they understand the political process or what parties mean, any person understands what leadership is, what it is to be a leader, what it is to have responsibility, what it is to come across polish, have education. That is all. You don't have to have grade 12 education or university education to understand, this is a very important position. This person is going to have to produce. This person is going to have a lot of responsibility, people below them. You would expect that the minimal would be an official response if you're selecting a candidate. I mean, this is not small peanuts.
The woman in the back, please.
Is to Tristan. Can you give, because I don't have the same understandings that most of the people in the room have, can you give us or me a sense of what your threat would have been within the New Democratic Youth executive, what's going on in like their politics, and can you give more like number figures, number of youth and their age categories, and how you might have been toppled, or just extrapolate on just certain events and how they snowball?
A threat?
Well, if you were overturned, then obviously you're a threat, or somebody, you're connected, like somehow there's a threat there. They didn't just get rid of you because they didn't like, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
There's
sorry, I
something
understand
else.
now.
So what's going on there, or what do you think is going on there?
Essentially, the original conflict that started this was most likely, I don't know if we have official proof of this yet, the original conflict was that someone in the provincial executive didn't like the association of the Toronto Young New Democrats with Fight Back magazine, that other left-wing group, and a lot of the executive members, a lot of the leadership of TYND is involved with Fight Back as well. And you know, he's selling magazines and things, but not as TYND, right? There is a lot of connection, and the accusation was that they were mixing the money, which is completely provable false. But the threat was that there was this radical left-wing group that had taken over the youth of Toronto, and when they got rid of that, it seemed to take over the youth of province. And they didn't pay any attention to the fact that they didn't try to take over and pick people like me who didn't even live in the city at the time, and a whole bunch of, no, they didn't try to get Fight Back put there. But that was the threat that they perceived, we believe.
So from there, in light of what happened federally, that the momentum and what the youth carried, where you had 3 members that didn't even show up in a riding and got elected.
Yeah.
What kind of momentum do you think that they tried to curtail? Was it more a combination of sleaze as usual, where they then tried to control it further? Because it's not as if Rosie Marchese hasn't brought up the fact of Catholic school funding. So I'm missing something.
I think that they, like you said, it was simply a threat. It wasn't that they're trying to control it or build anything. We were doing extremely well. Even in the 3 weeks that we were there, I apparently contacted more riding associations as the outreach coordinator than any outreach coordinator the last 5 or 10 years in 3 weeks. Like, we were doing well. We had a lot of really, really involved people, and it looked like we might be doing left-wing, actually maybe socialist things a lot of the time. But more we were bringing activists in. Like, we were working heavily with the ideas from TYND and with brands, and just really reaching out and building something. And it was scary because they didn't know where our political stripe was.
There's maybe this might be the last question before we move on. This gentleman back there.
More common with the whole situation in Ondi. I'm elected to the new slate. It was one of the token positions. What happened there was just, it was a farce, right? They're not trying to build anything, they're not trying to do anything. The original slate that was in for 3 weeks has done more than the current slate has done in, what, half a year?
It's almost a year now.
Almost a whole year. And it's a shame. They're not trying to do anything, they're just trying to get people with good ideas out.
Yeah.
Like some of the things that site did, they endorsed union strikes. We were in Hamilton at the time, so we endorsed the striking USW workers, right? We raised funds, we got youth connected, and they just thought that we were doing too much and we were too left-wing. It was a shame.
Does it question, Doug? We're going to move on to the next part.
Well, maybe just to clarify it, well, it won't clarify it, but it'll maybe give a little information to help clarify the issue. I was asked not to go into a set of buildings where on the federal election previously I had taken over a number of polls, and instead of 20 for Liberal and 15 for Conservative and like 5 for NDP, we managed to break into that whole Crescent Town complex, and what it was a bunch of young students that they may have seen as somewhat radical because they were Bible students, but they were also political science plus political economy. So it was seen, I brought a couple of them back to the headquarters, so there was a story going around that a bunch of radicals were managing to get 160 votes where they'd only had 5 before in several of the polls. I was taken up and said, here, you should take a look at this. You won't believe it.
Thanks for that interpretation, Doug.
So that seems to line up with what you're talking about over here. People seeing, among some very conservative element of the old trade union movement that still are in some kind of power, that just say get rid of them, or they see some kind of a threat. That's,
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now to the second part, and that's just, I'd like to, well, I'm going to open up the floor to, take a speakers list for anybody who wants just to say anything. Now the panelists are now equal members with the audience, and I'll take any of your hands going up as well. Just your analysis of the state of democracy within the NDP, and perhaps what can be done about it. So on that, I'll take